NXT Deadline. This pay-per-view seems like it would have fit perfectly into the Survivor Series weekend because it kind of reminds me of a Survivor Series kind of match and pay-per-view where there's a women's version and a men's version. And, it's kind of funny because the Survivor Series before, War Games at Survivor Series, War Games at the arena in which is hosting Survivor Series on a Saturday night of Survivor Series weekend. That was not new this year because NXT had been doing War Games on a Saturday night, Survivor Series weekend, into the arena that's hosting Survivor Series, and in some occasions doing better crowds. So essentially, all the hype and hoopla about, the gate that the TD Garden got for WWE War Games essentially could have been what they got, if we go back a couple of years and they would have done this for NXT War Games on a Saturday night. So that is kind of why I think this Deadline pay-per-view would have fit into a Survivor Series weekend because it is a new, unique concept match, similar to, what we've seen with, like, War Games, similar to what we've seen with Elimination Chamber. It's a little more complicated. The rules are for, both the men and women, we'll leave them out here too because I have to read it myself, is 2 wrestlers start the match, and then every 5 minutes after, another wrestler enters until all 5 participants are present. After the last wrestler enters, there is a predetermined time limit. So I don't know. I originally heard there was a set time limit, like an additional 5 minutes, but I think maybe they're playing with that and going to change it up because it seems like that it's kind of like War Games in the sense of the match begins when the last participant enters, but then the problem I think with this is every time you get a pinfall or a submission, you gain a point. So if you are in the match first, you obviously want to be in first. You have the most opportunities to gain a point, right? I mean, if you're playing a baseball game, you want to play 9 innings and you have your opponent only play 3. You got a lot more opportunities to score. So the person who enters last, good news, you got 4 minutes on the clock and you're already down 5. The other people got 5 pinfalls. Good luck with that.
I don't see. Here's the thing. I don't mind it either way. I do like. I agree with you in one aspect where you're in the match the longest, which means you're going to be more fatigued towards the end of the match. So somebody that comes in kind of towards the end would have also an advantage. Yeah, you could do it like you could have it where essentially the freshest person that's in the match, the other competitors are literally all gassed, and you just start hitting your moves on everybody, and then you just get pinfall, and you score points.
Well, to differentiate this from War Games, because there are more rules.
Yeah.
So a wrestler who is pinned, submitted, or disqualified, obviously the other person gets a point. The wrestler who has that happen to them has to spend 90 seconds in the penalty box. So they got to go. And this reminds me, WCW in the end of WCW days, and I only know this because, I've been watching, I've chronologicalized WCW pay-per-views in the last couple of years where I've been catching up and watching things that necessarily, just watching it as if it's fresh because, well, once you're done watching WCW, you never have to watch it again because it doesn't continue. If WWE stopped producing content for the rest of time starting today, I could go back, watch Monday Night Raw, or watch WrestleMania 1 and then watch every TV show in order, until I come to an end, and hopefully that another 20 years passes by, and that's how I filled my time. So I kind of found a way to watch WCW from start to finish, which you can't do with WWE because it keeps making content, so you'd never catch up per se. But they did a thing like this where they did like a hockey gimmick where essentially, and the pay-per-view might even been in like Toronto, where you went in the penalty box if you got disqualified or you committed a penalty, and they had referees similar to hockey. But this one maybe not so gimmicky, but still you go into the penalty box for 90 seconds. So you get pinned. You're one of the first 2 participants. Somebody in those first 2 participants gets pinned. One of those guys has to go away for 90 seconds so that when the new person comes in, then they've had maybe their other opponent been sitting there waiting, and then the other guy enters the match. And so I don't necessarily think it's going to be like War Games where we have a large group of people all in at once, because somebody's going to be in the penalty box.
Yeah, I think so. I think you're going to see some penalty boxes in there. I will say though, I do like the fact that they're incorporating for this match. So it's like a hybrid approach. Like you have like the Iron Man, you have like it's like a scramble. It's also an Impact's King of the Mountain kind of thing. So
Yeah.
it's like mixing and matching different elements to make one pretty interesting match. That's what's really got me interested in Deadline is just watching these matches because I'll be completely honest. I haven't been watching a ton of NXT. I skim through it. I check highlights out because WWE has a really good. They put a lot of highlights out, so you can still see what's going on and you can still see a lot of the storylines. It's just the concept alone it makes me want to watch, and there are certain wrestlers that I do want to watch because there's the Carmelo Hayes of the world who I think he's been working with Shawn Michaels, the Heartbreak Kid, and by all accounts, it seems like HBK is kind of taking this kid under his wing, and it's kind of like his chosen one, so to speak. And I think Carmelo Hayes is going to be a mega star when he does get the eventual call up to the main roster. So it's like anytime Carmelo Hayes is on your TV screen, I highly recommend watching because not only is he really good, but the backstory is he works with the Heartbreak Kid Shawn Michaels, who last time I checked, he's had a pretty darn good career in the wrestling business. So if somebody like Shawn Michaels takes somebody under his wing, you kind of have to focus on that, don't you?
Yeah, I mean, obviously having Shawn Michaels as somebody who's looking out for you, and then kind of being a mentor. Yeah, I mean,
Plus, Shawn Michaels has made a ton of mistakes over the years, so he could show this kid, hey, don't do this, don't do this, don't do this, because hey, I've done it and look what happened to me. So it's like it's like almost like a big brother, or like that uncle that's just who's been around the block. It almost reminds me of like all the elder Samoans like have like taken the kids now, which are the bloodline, and they've learned from those guys, their elders over the years. So it's cool to see this big brother thing. And then you also have like a JD McDonough, you have a Grayson Waller. I know your guy Joe Gacy, who I hope doesn't win the match, and then Axiom. I've heard a little bit of Axiom. I think I've seen a little bit of him, but from people that I trust, they're pretty high on Axiom, and I think Axiom's got a chance to be really good.
Yeah, I mean, I will say that much. With Axiom, he's probably, what do you call it, like the more unknown. I don't know if he kind of looks like a Power Ranger. Rey Mysterio. He's a mass competitor, but he doesn't look like your traditional mass competitor, I guess is the best way to put it.
No.
So that is definitely unique on his end, but I'm not gonna lie, and I follow NXT very loosely, and here's we'll talk about this in a little bit, but hey, this is where AEW has the edge, I guess, is the fact that Ring of Honor, which is their secondary product, doesn't have a TV show, so it's mostly featured on their main show. So I am very familiar with Ring of Honor talent, and people are going to be at the Ring of Honor pay-per-view because they're on AEW. NXT obviously its own thing. If you're not watching NXT, you don't know who these people are. It's its own thing. It's not affiliated, or it's not, it's affiliated, but it's not WWE programming. But I will say, once in a while you do see a person. I actually saw Grayson Waller. It was kind of weird. He did a dark match for a Monday Night Raw I went to right before Survivor Series. And Joe Gacy, I think, was on a main event match that was taped before Monday Night Raw, I think last week. So if you do go to Raw, you might catch these guys. But if you're not watching NXT on a weekly basis, it's hard. But hey, WWE, how do they circumvent that? Is just like we have with the upcoming Ring of Honor pay-per-view, is saying, well, I don't know these guys. Why would I be interested? Well, we're going to throw some names in there as well that will keep you interested. And one of those names, obviously, for this upcoming pay-per-view is the New Day. They'll be taking on Pretty Deadly for the NXT Tag Team titles. Do you see this just being a one-off to get eyeballs on it? Do you see them maybe taking this direction? Obviously, with the Usos doing the thing with the tag team titles on their end, having quote-unquote no competition. Do you see the New Day kind of staying fresh by putting some belts on them and maybe down the road reinvigorating a rivalry with the Usos again with, their belts and their belts? Or do you just see this being a one-off?
I hope it's not a one-off. I'm not a huge fan of Pretty Deadly. I've seen enough of them where I don't know. I mean, obviously WWE has, they obviously like this tag team because you wouldn't put the belts on a team that you don't like. I just don't care for the gimmick. I'm just not a huge fan of what they present. And again, it's like I've always bring up the analogy. It's like going to your local ice cream shop. It's just their flavor, like the flavor ice cream that they are. It's just not something I'm into. So it's me personally. I'm just not into it. So. And here's the thing: New Day was when New Day formed back when we were doing this show years ago. I was a critic of the New Day. I didn't really care for it, and the New Day grew on me. So maybe Pretty Deadly grows on me eventually. But personally, I want to see the New Day take these titles, and it would actually. I feel like, as I've used this saying before, rising tides raise all ships. So. You put the New Day in there, you get some extra eyeballs because the people, the fans love the New Day. The New Day is one of those acts that I feel like will be over. And then even 15, 20 years from now, when they're not even wrestling regularly, they'll pop up on an anniversary show and the fans will go nuts because it's the New Day. They're cool. They have their shtick and it's great. And it's good because, like you said, they can literally down the line have something built up with an Usos tag championship match, because let's be honest, the New Day and the Usos, whenever they do matches, they battle, those matches are classics, and you don't want to oversaturate it. So I think having the New Day kind of doing their own thing and the Usos kind of doing their own thing, it's going to get people maybe not to forget about their tag matches, but it's one of those things where it's like absence, like what is it? Absence makes the heart grow fonder. So you can kind of bring them back together later on. And again, this helps the NXT brand because you're getting more eyeballs on the product where they can get exposed. The other fans that maybe don't watch NXT can sit there and tune into NXT because of the New Day, and they get new eyeballs on, wrestlers like Axiom, for example, that maybe people aren't familiar with. So I think it's a great concept, and I think hopefully they pull out the victory on the weekend or on Saturday.
And two, I mean, you got to remember, for those who aren't aware, NXT, I don't know, not on a weekly basis, and they didn't before COVID, but on a pay-per-view basis, it looks like they're hitting the road again. And I'm not just talking WrestleMania weekend. I'm talking Vengeance Day in February, supposed to be happening from the Spectrum Center in Charlotte, North Carolina. And I don't think they plan on selling it out. I don't think they plan on getting 17,000 for that. Back in the day, yes, and back in the day, especially too when you pair it up with a WWE pay-per-view that weekend. But I think in general, just to get a Monday Night Raw sized crowd, like a 5,000, 6,000 seater for this. You're going to, having the New Day there or, and somebody like that, especially too on the road to WrestleMania, it doesn't hurt. And I feel like there's going to be somebody involved. It's not just going to be NXT people from the up and downs. It's going to be, what we see for the NXT Championship. Remember, those Iron Survivor Challenge matches are just number one contender matches, and we'll get to the women's one in a minute. But Bron Breakker and Apollo Crews, obviously we saw him a couple years ago in a rivalry at WrestleMania time. I think it was with Big E. And here he is, going for the NXT Championship. Do you see Bron Breakker losing this? I don't. I think Apollo Crews is great to be an interesting challenger, to be obviously somebody who wasn't doing great things on the main roster, kind of getting stagnant like Mandy Rose, and reinvent himself and come back to NXT and get back to the roots. But I don't necessarily think, though, the problem is Bron Breakker. I don't want to say he's Roman Reigns, but we've gone this far with Bron Breakker, and now you really got to do something more legitimate with him. You can't you're not going to have him lose this weekend, I don't think.
No, I don't think so. I think Breakker continues to just have that nice title reign that he has, and it's good that he's wrestling somebody the caliber of an Apollo Crews, because Apollo Crews, as you just mentioned, he's a proven commodity. He's been on the main card, he's been on the main roster, and he's had a good run. Yeah. And he's held gold, at the highest level. So I mean, the guy is a talented individual. And again, this is somebody that could give Bron Breakker a little more juice. I mean, Bron Breakker has enough juice as it is because he's just a awesome competitor. I think he's ready for the main roster, but it's probably good that he's down there right now because I mean, who legitimately do you see? taking the title off of him at this point. I think right now he can be the NXT version of Roman Reigns, but maybe not to the Roman Reigns bloodline level. But as a dominant champion, where he can hold this title, for a long time. So it's and Apollo Crews, he doesn't need the NXT title. He can wrestle, lose this match clean, and still be fine. And he could wrestle for other championships down the line. It's just one of those things where I think Breakker should have the belt. I think they should just keep it on him.
So let's talk that women's championship, our number one contendership for Mandy Rose's title. Zoe Stark, Cora Jade, Roxana Perez, Kiana James, and Indy Hartwell. To be honest with you, if you're somebody who is the NXT follower like I am, you might recognize more names in the women's match than you do the men's match. But remember, and it's hard because when you see the name of this match, your brain goes right to kind of like War Games, and that there's some sort of cage involved. And yes, the penalty box will probably be some sort of cage or something. But there is no cage, so there'll be no going out of the penalty box, in and out of cages or anything like that. It's going to be one ring, straight one ring. Because anytime you ever think, because it's got a lot of war. This match is a lot of War Games principles in it, with the whole 5 minutes somebody enters. There's a penalty box, so similar to War Games, where they're all in the little cage beforehand. That's probably what the penalty box will look like. But yeah, it definitely opens itself up to somebody entering the match at the same time someone is entering the penalty box or coming out of the penalty box, creating a conflict there of two people, kind of one person in the ring, and then boom, somebody entering and their penalty coming up at the same time. So it goes from one person alone to three people in the ring simultaneously, or goes from two people in the ring to two people in the ring with a pinfall, with one leaving and one coming in, kind of like a gauntlet match. So this one, obviously number one contendership for Mandy Rose's title. Do you see anybody on here that I'll say that you think is a good threat to Mandy Rose's championship?
You know what? I have to say Cora Jade. I think Cora Jade is a really interesting competitor. She's still very young, but she is very good. I think she's one of those talented NXT women's competitors. I mean, I like Zoe Stark as well. I think Roxanne Perez is, she's working her way up. I mean, she, I don't know if you know this, you probably do. You're a lot of the indie competitors, but Roxanne Perez was actually she's learned a lot under the tutelage of current broadcaster for NXT, Booker T. Booker T has his own wrestling school, and he took her under his wing and taught her a lot of the business. So she's somebody I think Roxanne Perez is a dark horse in this match. My gut tells me Cora Jade, but I will not be surprised if Roxanne Perez comes out as the victor. She's just one of those dark horses that I could see being a champion in the very near future. But currently, I think Cora Jade has the best chance in this match.
Yeah, and and here's a question too, and because they're not on the card, I wonder what kind of involvement Toxic Attraction is going to have in this match. Are they going to come out and they're going to mess with some people? Are they going to get involved somehow, some way? Because Mandy Rose isn't defending the title on this card. It is a 5-match card. Alba Fire versus Isla Dawn is the 5th match to round out this card. I'll be honest with you. When it comes to those two, I probably know the least about in the NXT world about those two. And I know a decent amount I said about, the rest of the match on the card. It's a 5-match card. So with that being said, I imagine it's probably going to be about a 2.5-hour pay-per-view. And I imagine both of the Iron Survivor matches go probably 30 minutes to 45 minutes.
Yeah, easily 30 to 45 minutes apiece, because I don't see the other matches going 30 minutes. I could see them on average maybe going about 15, 20. I mean, I think in this singles match, I think Alba Fire, I mean, she's a very good competitor. I mean, she's held gold in the NXT UK side of things, so she's a very, very good competitor. I don't know. And of course, she went under the name of Kaylee Ray previously, but I don't know enough about Isla Dawn. I haven't followed her journey as much as I have Alba Fire. So based off of that alone, I'm just going to have to go with my gut, and that tells me Alba Fire is probably going to win this match.
I'm trying to see here because I've after the last, so I've read this and I didn't really get exactly and this is why it's kind of confusing. So in the match, there's a total of 5 people. 5 times 5 is 25. But it says after the last. But I'm reading now that after the last superstar ends, there is a predetermined time limit of 25 minutes. That's a long period of time, because if you're telling me that it's going to take, you're going to start with 2 people, and then you're going to have 15 minutes of entries, right? Because there's 3 more competitors, so 5 minutes, 5 minutes, 5 minutes. So that's 15 minutes this match is going to last without, any pinfalls. And then an additional 25 minutes. So I haven't been able to see if what I'm reading is a changeable thing. I've also read, like I told you at the start of this, that it was going to be a predetermined time. So we'll find out, I guess, on Saturday whether it's 25 minutes total for this match, and that after the last superstar ends, it's only an additional 10 minutes to round out the 25 minutes, or if it's an additional 25 minutes, or if they're going to just come up with a whole new time in general. Curious to see how that works heading into the pay-per-view on Saturday. It is a 7 o'clock pay-per-view, or an 8 o'clock pay-per-view, if I'm not mistaken, on Saturday. It is not during the day. It is at nighttime. The reason I say that is obviously because it seems like Ring of Honor is going to be doing the nighttime or the daytime pay-per-view for the do not go against NXT, which is kind of strange because, I didn't know that they really kind of looked at them as that much of competition, but they're picking a daytime pay-per-view. But NXT Deadline hits the air at, I'm trying to get the time here, because 7 or 8 o'clock, I'm assuming 8 o'clock. 8 o'clock is when it hits the air. So 7:30, I think, is the pre-show. 8 o'clock Eastern is the main card, 5 Pacific, 8 o'clock here from Florida, where it'll be taking place. And like I said, the last pay-per-view probably to not be on the road, and we'll see what Triple H is we saw obviously what he's done with WWE. We'll see if he can bring back NXT, because NXT was where WWE is right now. It was hot ticket, wasn't a cheap ticket, arenas were full to actual capacity, and that's what he's doing with WWE right now. So we'll see if he can do that with NXT going forward. And I think this NXT Deadline pay-per-view obviously is a good, I don't want to say starting point because they've already started it, but a good last pay-per-view from the Performance Center before they attempt to go back on the road and revitalize all the success that they had with the takeovers.
And it's a welcome sight with Triple H, under his leadership. Obviously the original black and gold NXT was some of the best matches, some of the best shows that we've seen in a long time. So getting back on the road, I think this is a chance for them to reclaim some of that old glory, and it's going to be a lot of fun. And it's interesting to see Ring of Honor doing their show at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And I honestly, if looking at the card, obviously there's more known commodities, at least from my perspective, because you have a guy like Claudio Castagnoli, and you also have a Chris Jericho, and there's obviously a massive amount of talent that's going to be on the Ring of Honor pay-per-view. It's going to be a lot of fun.